Hi, this is Brendan from Watto Training, and in this tutorial we take a look at Level 2 driving skills for C-Class learners. This tutorial focuses on the what as opposed to the how. For how-to videos, please go to the Watto Training YouTube channel. There are 5 levels of skill development for C-Class learner drivers. This model is based on the Novice to Mastery model, which has 4 distinct stages of mastery: Novice, Competent, Experienced, and Master or Expert. The reason I have changed this system to the 5 levels is learner drivers, once they get their licensed, are not overly experienced, and they're definitely not masters or experts at driving. They're basically starting a new phase of their driving journey and experience. So as a result, it's more applicable to use this system. You may have your own system, that's great, but this is one that just helps me think about what category a driver is in and how to appropriately meet their learning needs. So we've got level 1 through to level 5. Level 1 would be for a beginner. Level 5 would be someone who is test preparation phase. The blue rectangles denote approximately how much time you may dedicate to training within the logbook hours of that learner, and that is a very rough guide that could vary greatly from student to student. Also on the right of the screen we have red lines pointing up and down. What this is showing is that as we go from level 1 through to level 5, some students might progress in some of the skill areas, but also may have to go back and recap on areas that they're still struggling with or haven't yet mastered. So a student might be quite good as an on-the-road driver, but might have some maneuvers that they need a fair bit of work on. So you've got to be flexible with the training. Let's take a look at each level quickly. First of all, level 1, beginner, no driving experience. At this point we focus on foundational skills such as cabin drill and controls, observation and scanning, move off and stop, steering and signaling. Here's an example of a level 1 training location. Nice big open area. Level 2, using foundational skills such as observation and scanning, moving off and stopping into a quiet on-road situation such as a quiet residential area, 40, 50, 60 zones, left turns, right turns, simple roundabouts, T-sections, and we start working on our foundation skills for maneuvers. Here's an example of a level 2 training location. What's good about these locations is that they're quiet. We've got the curbs on the left there, which are at about 45-degree angle, which are a lot better in, if the student tends to drive up on those as opposed to a 90-degree curb. There aren't any road markings on the road quite often, but you can see a crack going up the middle of the road, which is a reference point you could use, as well as bottom right of screen, a blue reflector as well. So this is where a lot of training will occur in the early phases, and we call that level 2. Level 3, using foundational skills in a broader range of situations, 40 zones, 50, 60, 70 and 80 zones, as well as broadening traffic situations. Lots of teaching guidance in this section of this level, practice, time on task, skill building and maneuvers. Here's an example of a level 3 training location. It's a sweeping bend to the left, which would require the student to slow down, look through the corner. We can see there's a limit point of vision on the left there with the trees and the fence, and there's a suggested speed of 40 kilometers an hour on the warning sign on the left. Level 4, putting level 3 skills into practice in higher order situations, for example, higher speed zones, busier traffic, complex intersections and roundabouts, training where necessary in higher order skills, but an increasing focus on the learner taking responsibility for hazard recognition and decision making, as well as operational skills. Lots of maneuvers and trainer using more coaching techniques as opposed to straight up instructional techniques. This is an example of a level 4 training location. Note that we have a truck parked on the left side of the road, so the student has that to contend with as well. It's quite a busy area with dual carriageway, traffic lights up ahead as well, and there's driveways behind that truck parked on the left as well, just in case a car comes out. So this is an example of an area where it's more complex than those basic earlier levels. Level 5, test practice using Level 4 skills, informal assessment and feedback, learner encouraged to self-reflect on own performance, focus as well on preparing for driving beyond the test as a solo driver, that is with no supervisor or parent present, hence the added responsibility. Here's some examples of some Level 5 training situations. Let's start from the top left. We've got keep clear, painted sign on the road, we've got pedestrian crossing, traffic lights. To the right, we have a bus at a bus stop pulled over. Bottom right corner, a cyclist riding along the road. And then bottom left, we have a level crossing. So you'd note that these areas do appear in lower levels of training, but the difference at Level 5 is that we are assessing the learner's performance. So how they observe the hazards and manage the hazards without coaching or instruction. And then providing them with feedback if they've made any errors, to outline those errors and how to overcome them, and then it guides to future practice as well. Transmission. We have automatic trainers, we have manual trainers, we have those who do both. Please take away from the tutorial the notes that suit your transmission type. General training strategies for Level 2 C-Class learner drivers. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So I'd like to encourage all trainers to spend that time on adequately preparing themselves for the training experience. And the beauty of it is, if you do that foundational preparation, it can be applicable on lesson after lesson after lesson. So as you get students come in, you'll know that you've got some go-to areas where you say, okay, I've got a Level 2 driver, I can take them to this nice little residential estate, it's very quiet, I've got some cul-de-sacs, some right turns, some left turns, and we can make good progress in this area today. Okay, remember the priority triangle. We want to focus most of our attention in a lesson in Level 2 in the top triangle, which is the must-know elements of training. You may slip into a little bit of should know, but I would generally say you don't want to get caught up in the nice to know trap. Stay focused. You might get some questions that come from the student and you may choose to answer those or not, but just be wary of running off onto tangents and things like that. The student needs to know what skills to apply in specific situations to perform the task that you've set out for them. Miller's Law, known as the Rule of 7. The number of objects an average human can hold in short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2. So don't overload the student with too much instruction. Don't talk for too long a period before you actually getting them to perform some kind of activity. Break the lessons up. Some other tips to utilize in your Level 2 training. Create an active learning environment, following on from the last comment. Focus your attention and the learner's attention. It's the age of distraction, so make sure that you and your learner are in the moment. Connect knowledge to practice. If you're going through a principle with a student, it might be a left-hand turn technique. If you stop and outline how to do so, then make it clear to them that it will be useful for them to be able to apply that. So again, it's in that top part of the priority triangle. Help students take ownership over their learning. They will ultimately drive independently once they achieve their license. So as we progress through the levels, promote the added responsibility and ownership factor. Communicate your message in a variety of ways. It could be models, diagrams, explanation, demonstration. Mix it up, and that will help the student keep interested and stimulated during the lesson without falling into lapses of boredom and disinterest. Okay, promote quality in performance. So here we're talking about having standards from your vehicle to the way you talk, to the way you present yourself, and also in terms of your training resources, right through to the performance of maneuvers, aiming for that high standard. Then there's a payoff with high standard too, is safety as well. Okay, provide timely feedback. Be wary of giving feedback right in the moment when a student's performing some sort of a complex task. Now, it might be a simple task to you as an experienced driver, but to a beginner, it'll take a lot of concentration and focus. So just be wary of when you give your feedback on Level 2 driving. Manage expectations. A student might think that their dad said, oh, you should be out on the freeway by now or something like that, or my brother was doing maneuvers at this level. You have to manage expectations carefully and really focus on owning the time. So it's your student's time, and to focus on their pathway and their journey. And don't lose the client. Don't give the student any reason to look for another driving school. So things that normally lose clients, yelling unnecessarily, berating the student, being sarcastic, condescending, those types of things. So you've got to be in the right headspace, and you've got to choose the persona that you feel comfortable that you can operate as in the lessons. And promote practice. If the student has the ability to practice between sessions with you, it will benefit everybody as they progress forward through their levels. Let's take a look at the SMART goals for training. Make sure your goals are clear and reachable. Each one should be specific, that is, clearly defined on what the aim of the exercise is. Measurable, measure performance against road rules, manufacturer's handbook, test guidelines. Achievable, don't set the high jump bar too high or too low. Relevant, remember the priority triangle. And time-bound, don't enforce unreasonable time limits on skill mastery. That is, set the student up for a fail, but at the same token, as a trainer, always aim to achieve competency benchmarks in a timely manner. Your plan might be pretty clear. We can look at the blue vehicle heading towards the red flag. All there is a slight hill to drive up. But in reality, the white car shows the way a training program may unfold. You know your starting point, you know you want to get to the end point, but it might be a challenging journey to get there. So you've got your ultimate focus, but you have to get through each challenge one step at a time. Whilst training, remember to manage risk. Step 1, identify the hazards. Step 2, decide on who might be harmed and how. So if I'm in a level 2 area, I'm focused on pedestrians, bicycle riders, parked vehicles, vehicles coming in and out of streets, and there's a fair bit of driving up the middle of the road that often goes on in residential areas, which has to be taken into consideration. Evaluate the risks and decide on the precautions for step 3. Step 4, record your findings and implement them. And step 5, review your assessment and update if necessary. With regards to step 4, I tend to keep a record of where I'm going and what I'm doing in different areas, because what it does is it helps me manage my time effectively. There's no just winging it and driving around anymore. We want to achieve specific exercises and tasks within the time that we've been given. So I know if I go into a certain area or follow a certain route that I will cover those. And step 5, always reviewing. You might have an area where there was once a roundabout that might be converted to a set of traffic lights. So you're constantly reviewing the changes that happen to an area as well. We always start level 2 training sessions with our cabin drill, making sure our student is appropriately set up in the seat, steering, seatbelt, etc. And making sure that as you're going through your different levels, they're gaining more confidence and competence with identifying and operating their controls. They've got to keep their eyes on the road and not be looking down with their eyes away from the road as they operate the controls. So we're talking steering wheel controls, dashboard instrument cluster lights and dials, warning lights, and console controls. Let's shift our focus now to driving. Level 2 areas will be quiet roads, and we will be focusing on basic skills. 5 of the basic skills we will focus on will be road positioning, signaling, braking, gear changing, and giving way. It's essential that we promote vision principles. And what I've done in this tutorial is just put together some visual reference points for the students. So the first one is to think about the eagle. The eagle eye is among the strongest in the animal kingdom, with an eyesight estimated at 4 to 8 times stronger than that of the average human. So although we don't possess eagle eyes, that should be our reference point for aiming as far as we can into the traffic environment, to look long. The next animal to remember is the meerkat. You can see them there looking up actively with their eyes on the move. The learner must keep their eyes moving constantly in the distance, at the road surface, to their left and right, and regularly looking at their mirrors and instruments. The third animal to remember is the owl. Move your head. We have what's called the blind spot, which we covered in level 1, and make sure that your student is turning their head. Also, pillar A gets in the way at times, and for taller drivers, the rear view mirror could get into their line of sight as well. So remember the eagle, the meerkat, and the owl. Use your peripheral vision. We can see that peripheral vision is vision as it occurs outside the point of fixation, away from the center of gaze. This is an example of how vision principles are applied in a level 2 training area. So this is a level 2 training area that I use. You can see it's a residential area. We were driving along the road and that white car was parked in that position, and as we were coming up the road, it then reversed out in front of us. Now, I took that photo when we were pulled over, and I was actually introducing a gentle hill start takeoff. So this is where all those vision principles come in. So number 1 is the eagle eye looking up ahead. Number 2 is the meerkat, eyes on the move. Number 3 is the owl, turn your head. So while we're doing the hill start, we were doing a shoulder check as well. And then when we caught that white car backing out in our peripheral vision, even though that vehicle was meant to give way, they were quite blind due to that ute, so they just reversed straight out onto the road, and we were able to avoid the vehicle. They drove off, and on we went. So even though you're in level 2 areas, be wary of the unexpected. Question: is there a formula or system I can use for teaching a learner? Easy, the system of vehicle control. This is not the only system that is out there, but let's use it as a reference point to guide our learners for level 2. Now, the origin of the system of vehicle control is the Hendon Police Academy, which is in the UK in the 1930s. It simply puts braking, indicating, looking into the mirror, etc., into a logical sequence. The system of car control is a drill, each step of which is to be considered in sequence by the driver at the approach to any hazard. What is a hazard? A hazard is anything dangerous or potentially dangerous that a driver may encounter. A roundabout, speed bump, overtaking maneuver, intersection, accident scene, sharp bend. In short, anything which would or could interrupt your progress. So the slide I showed with the reversing vehicle is a good example of a hazard. The benefits of the system of car control. By correct application of the system, the vehicle will always be in the right place, at the right speed, and in the right gear. The trainer will teach the learner the following steps. Set the course. So that's using the brain. Step 2, check the mirrors, which will involve using the eyes. Step 3, signal using the hands. Step 4, brake using the feet and position the vehicle. Step 5, gears and mirrors. And step 6, take evasive action. So it's quite a lot of coordination to work in for the system. First step, set the course. The trainer will teach the learner to scan ahead, identify hazards, make a plan, and prepare to respond. Step 2, the trainer will teach the learner to use the rear vision mirrors on the approach to any hazard or potential hazard. The trainer must teach the learner to check their mirrors before changing their speed or road position, when preparing to turn or change lanes, especially if they plan to turn where others may not expect it, such as at laneways, driveways, and side streets, when they are stopped behind another vehicle. Step 3, the trainer will teach the learner to signal in the correct direction long enough to give sufficient warning to other drivers and pedestrians when intending to turn, diverge, move into the edge of the road or curb, enter a line of traffic, at a T-section where the continuing road curves to the left or right, leaving the continuing road to proceed straight ahead onto the terminating road. Step 4, speed and position. The trainer will teach the learner to reduce speed to a safe rate of approach and arrival at the hazard, move into the correct position to take a turn. The trainer will teach the learner to select the correct gear appropriate for speed, vehicle, and driving conditions. Check mirrors again before entering the hazard zone. And step 6, evasive action. The trainer will teach the learner to avoid any potentially dangerous situation which may have developed, e.g. give way or stop, operate the accelerator pedal smoothly, and progressively for both acceleration and deceleration. Turning left, additional points. Check the mirrors, inside and out. Check their blind spot by looking over their shoulder. Indicate left for approximately 3 to 5 seconds before starting a turn. Check the intersection for hazards. Slow the vehicle for the turn using appropriate gears. Keep the vehicle in the correct position throughout the turn, no less than 1 meter and no more than 2 meters from the curb. That does vary in the literature, so doubly check that. I sort of generally work off 1 meter personally. Give way to pedestrians and vehicles if required. Drive at an appropriate speed throughout the turn, and check your mirrors again on completing the turn. After finishing the turn, accelerate to an appropriate speed for the traffic flow. So let's take a look at the system in action. Step 1, set the course. Step 2, mirror check. Step 3, signal left. Step 4, slow down and move over to the left. Step 5, gears and mirrors. So you'd be working down to second gear for the turn if it's clear. If you have to stop, you'll stop and go back to 1 for manual drivers. Step 6, take evasive action. So the example of where we would utilize this is driving around the block. So we can see vehicle A is taking all lefts. That keeps them on the left side of the road. They don't have to cross the line of traffic as they would for a right-hand turn. So if possible, work on left-hand turns first. Now I know this is just an idealized situation, but it gives you some sort of an idea of what we could work on as a reference point. Okay, let's look at right turns now, some additional points. Before making a turn, you must follow this sequence. Decide on the direction you want to go as early as possible. Look ahead, behind, to each side for other vehicles and road users, including motorcycles, bicycles and pedestrians, to make sure it is safe to turn. Signal as early as possible, certainly before beginning to slow down and start your turn, to give other road users sufficient warning of your intention. Take up the correct position on the road before you reach the intersection. Make your turn when safe. Let's have a look at the positioning here so we can see that the vehicle has come into that turning position, which is just to the left of the imaginary center line. Okay, let's look at that in practice. Step 1, set the course. Step 2, mirror check. Step 3, signal to the right. Step 4, slow down and position. Step 5, gear down, mirror check. And step 6, evasive action. We also do right turns into streets as well, so we can see the positioning as required in that diagram. So this is the way it would look in reality. We've got our learner driver driving around the block, this time with right-hand turns at every corner. Steering. This will be a major part of level 2 training. The trainer must teach their learner to steer a safe and steady course and maintain the correct course in a manner that is appropriate for the road and traffic conditions. And operate the steering in an appropriate manner, that is hand over hand or the pull-push method. Be very wary of the student's road positioning on left-hand turns. We can see here the student has turned the wheel to the left and then back to the right as well. So ensure that they stay on their side of the road. And in this example here, we can see a student has turned to the right and then fading off to the left as well. So watch their steering as they do their level 2 driving and be prepared to intervene. Steering correction from the left seat. The instructor may be required to intervene from the left seat to correct. Understeer on left and right corners, oversteer on left and right corners. Cutting the center line into corners and cutting the center line out of corners. So again, reaching over from the left-hand seat. If you keep the speed down, it's always easier to correct steering for the student and for you if you have to intervene. So gentle acceleration. You've also got your braking as well that you can go to slow the student down. Highly recommended tutorial, the 5 common crash types and how to avoid them. That's a trainer tutorial on my YouTube channel that I made, which will help trainers in terms of intervening and avoiding common crashes. Now with the Level 2 exercises, we've got the issue of give way. So give way rules where there are no signs, generally in residential areas. Some crossroads have no traffic lights or signs. Generally, if a learner is turning across another vehicle's path, they must give way. When turning at an intersection, they must give way to oncoming vehicles going straight ahead, oncoming vehicles turning left, any vehicle on your right. Give way rules where there are no signs continued. If your learner and an oncoming vehicle are turning right at an intersection, both cars should pass in front of each other. If other vehicles do not give way to your learner, do not create a dangerous situation. Learners must also give way to any pedestrians at or near the intersection on the road you are entering. So it's not outside the realms of possibility that in residential areas you will get chicanes and traffic calmers, you'll get bends to the left and right, you'll get small roundabouts like single lane roundabouts, and also you will get some crossroads. So just remember, in those situations the give way rules will apply. As mentioned as well, cars parked on the side of the road and managing cul-de-sacs as well, which are quite good for teaching turning circle and a good lead-in for those states and territories that teach the U-turn as well. Manoeuvres. Introduce and practice manoeuvres as per your state and territory requirements. Generally, level 2 areas being residential, quiet areas with those angled curbs are very good for introducing the manoeuvres. And as shown on that earlier slide as well, where I was doing the hill start on a nice gentle hill and graduate your training up to more complex hills and situations. Thanks for watching. This has been Brendan from Watto Training.